So here we have The Flight of Moloch. This was painted by William Blake in 1809 and pays special attention to the shofars. These were the Israeli horns. Very interesting. There's Moloch taken off, and what do we have here? Baby Jesus, right? He's saved from the fire. So how do you make sense of that? Well, you've got to really look into William Blake's headset. By that I mean his mind. So that came from the illustrations on the morning of Christ's nativity. And William Blake believed that John Milton was inspired, that he had true spiritual vision, but fell short because he was bound by the adherence of repressive tenets of Puritanism, and also by his preference for a distant and cruel Jehovah of the Old Testament over a redemptive figure like Jesus. So Blake was, in a sense, rebirthing Milton's poetry through baptism, through the human imagination. And so if you take a look at a very enigmatic and prophetic book called Europe, a Prophecy, written by Blake, he was influenced by On the Morning of Christ's Nativity. And in that poem, there's this messianic figure called Orc, who's a symbol of all creative energy, and he rises up against the repressive institutions of church and state, kind of what we're seeing now. So who was Moloch? Moloch was the biblical name given to a Canaanite god often associated with child sacrifice. And in the image I just showed you, the worshippers of Moloch are clanging together cymbals and blowing on shofars. So what's interesting is that the instrumentation is actually Judaic and not Canaanite. And if you go to John Milton, you'll see a beautiful piece of poetry where it says, "And sullen Moloch fled, hath left in shadows dread, his burning idol all of blackest hue, in vain with cymbals ring, they call the grisly king, dismal dance about the furnace blue, the brutish god of Nile, as fast Isis and Horus and the dog Inibus haste." So once again, we're going back to Egypt. And once again, we're looking at the obelisks, and we're looking at this crazy ancient child sacrificing culture. I do not believe that the Israelites and the Judites killed off the Canaanites. I believe that they were the Canaanites. And all you have to do is look at the myth that they that the walls of Jericho fell because of the marching of troops and the sounds of the shofar. And that to me sounds a little sketchy, you know. And once again, we go back to the Temple of the Mount here. Here's a picture of what it looks like if you were King David, the father of King Solomon. So you can take a look at it. It's classic. It fits in with all sorts of other places of child sacrifice in the ancient day. So if you do your homework, you have to ask, what is under the Mount of Mount Moriah? So that's that. And if you start to read the Bible, both Old and New Testament, you have to start to really ask some questions, and we can go into it very deeply, very deeply. I can talk to you about what my feelings are and why I've arrived at certain conclusions. As I said, I do my homework. I study very, very closely. I think I know a couple of things. I'm not trying to browbeat anybody. I'm just speaking from my mind. And start to go into the Old Testament. For the Judahites have done evil in my sight. That's an oracle of Yahweh, right? They have set their abominations in the house over which my name is invoked, defiling it. They built the shrines of the Topeth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and daughters in the fire, which I did not command, nor did it arise in my mind. I think that's Jeremiah 7:30-31. And so we know that Abraham was tempted to sacrifice his child. Was that really at God's command? Start looking at the Old Testament, look into Deuteronomy. When Yahweh your God has cut off before you the people among who you are about to enter to dispossess, and you have dispossessed them and lived in their land, be careful lest you are ensnared by them after they have been destroyed before you, lest you inquire about their gods, saying, how did these people serve these gods? I will likewise say, you must not do likewise for Yahweh your God, because every abomination to Yahweh that he hates, they have done for their gods, and for they even burn their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods. And I think that's also Deuteronomy 12, 29-31. So basically that's a warning, but it's also propaganda. It's basically saying publicly, hey, we're not the Canaanites. That doesn't make any sense. We talked about this before, that somehow the Israelites were in Egypt and they were slaves. There's no evidence of that. That Moses took 600,000 people and lived in the Sinai desert for 40 years. No archaeological evidence of that either. It makes far more sense to say the Canaanites became the Israelites. And it was a trial and error thing until Jesus came along, and he was the real deal. And that's why he overturned the tables twice at the at the temple. And it wasn't because he was saying this is hallowed ground. It was because he was saying bullshit. You people have been sacrificing children for centuries here, and I'm not going to see commerce done over the bones and the burnt remains of children. It is not hard to figure this out, people. All you have to do is read. It's all there, everything, When you take a look at the story of Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac, and that's Genesis 22, that's just the most famous example. There's also Jephthah's sacrifice of his daughter in fulfillment of a vow. That's Judges, 11:12, and then there's Mesha. He was King Mesha, and there's discussion of Moab's sacrifice of his firstborn son during this horrible siege. I think that's 2 Kings 3. There's various biblical law codes that demand that the firstborn of one's cattle be handed over as sacrifice to Yahweh. So you'll start to see all sorts of redemption of firstborn children in exchange for the offering of sheep, as in what happened with Isaac. Exodus 34:19-20. Or you go ahead and you see the cryptocurrency of the day, cash, shekels, being made to the priests. Look at Numbers 18, 15, 16. You can also look at Exodus 22, 28, and 29, which indicates that there were firstborn children sacrificed within these Yahwistic cults. Go ahead and look at Caravaggio, The Sacrifice of Isaac from 1603. Study that painting. We'll talk more later. Thank you.